Most women think that getting toned means losing more weight, but that's exactly what keeps them stuck. Inside of today's video, we are going to cover what's actually stopping you from getting toned, what being toned actually means, and I'm going to give you the roadmap that myself and my clients use to go from feeling flat and feeling fluffy to feeling toned, strong and confident. But first, we need to look at what's stopping you from getting toned. I know what you're thinking. If only I could just lose a few more pounds, if I could actually just get to my goal weight, I'll finally look toned, I'll finally look strong, I'll finally have some definition. Here is where you're going wrong. Having a toned physique is about having visible muscle definition and less body fat so that you can actually see that muscle definition. If you haven't spent much time building your physique in the gym, you don't feel like you have much muscle on your frame, you can do as much dieting as you like, you can be extremely good at dieting, but your physique will always look the same. You won't have that toned hourglass body that you want unless you actually spend time building some muscle mass. So now that we've cleared that up, what's actually stopping you from getting there? Okay, chronic dieting. Maybe you've tried all of the diets in the world, you tried all of the plans, you worked with a PT before, you've counted your calories, it works for a while and then you always go back to square one. I have a video here about how to lose fat sustainably, so we won't deep dive into that, but let's look at some of the mindset mistakes that are holding you back. Okay, you finish your diet, you're quite good at dieting, you're good at being in a deficit, you actually do finally get the body that you want, but you've dieted so hard on such low calories that you cannot bear to live that life anymore. You've literally done it all. You've smashed all of your cardio every single day, smashed the steps, smashed very, very low calories for weeks and weeks and months, restricted, told yourself you're not having that little bit of chocolate. You don't need it. And then when you get to the end of your diet, your brain is literally like, I cannot cope with this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And so what happens? You backfire, you rebound, habits start to slip, and before you know it, you're back at square one, whether that takes you a few months or even a year, even a couple of years. The women that I speak to, they'll refer to this time before in their heads where they were so fit, they had the body, but they felt like shit because of what they did to get there. So ask yourself how you're actually losing body fat to begin with, because that will dictate how you keep your results. Okay, so let's say you've lost the fat. The most important part after that you're missing is the reverse diet, okay? If you don't have a strategy for when you've lost the weight and old habits start to creep in, you start feeling like your old self again, getting pulled back to these old habits, which happens, then you're not going to get to that stage where you're actually building muscle mass. We're going to go through the roadmap shortly. You're falling off with your nutrition, with your habits, so you're not actually spending any time at maintenance. Everybody focuses on fat loss, everybody wants to lose fat. They think this is the magic pill that's going to get them toned, but actually no one ever speaks about sitting at maintenance, maintaining your weight, actually maintaining your habits long term. That is another skill in itself. And maybe you haven't reached this point yet because you're doing the chronic dieting, you're doing the unsustainable diets, or you don't really have a strategy in place for afterwards. We're going to go through that shortly, sis. It's very easy to look at other women around you and think, how the fuck did they get that body? Like, just doesn't feel possible. But those women who've got a strong, defined physique, they look toned in the clothes, outside of the clothes, they've just spent more time building muscle mass. Sometimes that sounds scary. You might think in your head you need to go and live like a bodybuilder, do loads of bulking phases, and you don't. I made this mistake for so long. I would do diet after diet. I was scared to eat above 1700 calories because that was all I knew, and I was scared of gaining weight. And I literally lifted 150 kg hip thrust. I could squat 80 kg. Could you tell? No, did not look like I trained, did not have big muscles, okay? I just looked like skinny and slim. I don't want to look slim. I'm not lifting all these weights to be slim, okay? This is what happened when I actually committed to a maintenance phase in the space of 6 months. So I went from this to this. That isn't bulking. I didn't live like a bodybuilder, okay? That was just me sitting at maintenance calories, maintaining my food, maintaining my habits, training hard in the gym, and finally I made some progress. You could see that I trained, I felt strong, I felt good in the gym, I had lots of energy, I was getting PBs, I was learning how to do pull-ups, all of these things. And when I finally looked in the mirror, I looked like I actually trained, which is what I want. I want to be toned, I want to be strong, I want to look athletic and like I go to the gym, not like I'm slim. What is being toned then, and how the fuck do we do it? Having a toned physique, in other words, is basically having more muscle mass on your frame. Lots of women freak out when they hear that because they think, oh, I don't want to get too bulky, I don't want to get too big, and I don't want to build all this muscle. I think it's that easy. No, it's not. You can't just go and add a bunch of muscle in like 2 months the same way you can start seeing fat loss progress in a couple of months. Building muscle is a much slower progress, again, which is what puts people off because you don't get those quick dopamine hits like you do when you've seen a scale come down and everyone's complimenting you because of how skinny you look. That's something that we need to overcome. So, if we want to get toned, if you want a strong, toned physique, then you need to get comfortable with building more muscle mass, intentionally spending time getting stronger in the gym, and also learning how to eat more food, even if that is just at maintenance calories. Because that can be a big jump. If you're so used to going from diet to diet, you'll fall off for a bit where you feel out of control, and then you get back on the diet and you feel really good. You're getting all them dopamine hits from everyone else telling you how great you look and you're feeling in control, but then you get diet brain and it can stay there if you don't transition to that next phase. What I mean by that is exactly what I went through. You get scared of eating more, you get so accustomed to living on lower calories that eating beyond that feels very, very scary. It feels like a big jump. But until you make that jump, you'll literally keep going round and round in these cycles. Your physique looks the same every year, you don't feel like you're progressing in the gym, you feel like things are just at a bit of a plateau, and that is frustrating, okay? We don't want that. So, we need more muscle mass, we need lower body fat so we can actually see that muscle mass, and we need more time spent at maintenance or in a building phase, and we still need structure, okay? We cannot just go from a fat loss phase to then maintaining, but not really maintaining, I see you, and expecting things to change, expecting your body to grow. So we are going to go over to the whiteboard and look at the roadmap together. So we've got the roadmap to your toned physique. We've got sustainable fat loss, reverse, maintain or build. We're going to go through each of these mistakes to avoid, what you need to focus on instead. Sustainable fat loss, you can watch the video for how to do this, but why would you do it sustainably? So you can actually build habits that last. You can learn how to navigate life things like meals out, periods, stressful times at work, IBS flare-ups. Yeah, it's happened to me. You can learn how to do all these things without letting those knock you off track like they do if you're on 1200 calorie diet, for example. It's very hard to actually live a life on 1200 calories. And if you've got a decent amount of fat to lose, you're going to need to be patient, you're going to need to take it slow and steady so you can actually change who you are and how you live in your lifestyle. So that is why we are going to do sustainable fat loss. But as you can see, this is just the first little thing in our roadmap, okay? We don't want to spend all of our time here all year round for years and years on years and then falling off here, going back to fat loss, falling off again, going back to fat loss. Listen, I get it. It's not an attack on who you are. It's diet culture. It's how we've all been raised as women, and it's also due to going from plan to plan to plan instead of seeing this out long term and focusing on habits long term, which is something that I work on a lot with my clients. So, after sustainable fat loss, after you have lost the weight that you want to lose, you've lost the fat you want to lose, this is our most important thing, because the biggest mistake you're making is you see this as the finish line. You think, right, I've lost the weight now, go and live my life, go have some Prosecco's again, eat all the sweet treats whenever I want them. And as nice as that would be, I would love that, honestly. As nice as that would be, we need to sustain habits and standards, and we need to progress in this phase, okay? We don't want to be stuck on low calories. We also don't want to go back to our old habits, our old self, okay? We need to progress forward and keep moving forward, which means we need to gradually increase food intake. We can't just go from dieting on lower calories to then eating whatever we want without any structure. That's when you start to feel out of control. That is when you find everything slipping. That is when you start to feel frustrated again and you feel like you're being stuck in that cycle, okay? We want to break that cycle by gradually increasing food intake. So this is going to take fat loss. It's going to take, depends how much weight you've got to lose. You can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. So let's do the math there. If you've got 30 pounds to lose, depending on your rate of loss, your lifestyle, you can lose 1 to 2 pounds a week. That would be 15 to 30 weeks of work. Factor in other things like holidays, weekends away, all of that jazz. We need to account for that as well. So when we reach the end of fat loss, girl, the work does not stop. Then we're going to reverse. This should usually take 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how your body responds, how you respond, because there are challenges in this phase. Okay, your hunger might still be high. You've got to adapt to actually sustaining these habits instead of going back to old ways. You've still got to keep structure and progression in your training and your nutrition as well. So what we're going to do here is increase food intake every week or every 2 weeks, just depending on how your body adapts, how the scale adapts, as in what your body weighs. So we're going to increase food gradually, week by week. And to make this phase as easy as we can, what you're going to do is still keep your meals similar. You're going to keep your habits similar, and all you're going to do is increase some carbs in each of your meals. So we're not going to abandon everything, abandon all of your habits, abandon all of your structure. You are going to keep the same meals that you've been having in your fat loss phase, that you've come to like, that you know fill you up, that are easy to prepare, and you're just going to add more food to those meals rather than overhauling everything. That is what you are going to do here. Okay, we're going to get to the end of a reverse. Your weight is going to stabilise. You're going to feel so proud because your body weight hasn't really changed. Maybe you've gained a kilogram, which is typically from glycogen stores, having more food inside of your body, having more carbs inside of your body. It's not fat gain. That is the goal of this phase. So you're going to feel so proud for getting there. But again, we don't want to just sit in, still reversing, still in a deficit. We don't want to just be trapped in that diet brain, which is so easy. I know, I've been there. So when we get to here, then we have a few options. Okay, we're either going to maintain, which would be your first point of call if you've never done that before. Now we're at maintenance. You're still going to keep all of your habits. You're going to stay on top of getting the food shop, planning meals, preparing meals, accounting for meals out, choosing healthier options where we can. Same with birthdays, weekends away. We're going to slip back into your routine as soon as you get back, and you are going to learn how to maintain your weight. So this is the part where lots of women get wrong. You don't typically need to do a big bulk straight away, or even a big bulk anyway, to build some definition in your physique to actually get this toned body that you want. Sculpted shoulders, more toned defined legs, nice juicy quads, strong arms, a strong toned back, peachy glutes, strong glutes. You don't need to necessarily bulk like a bodybuilder to achieve that, but we do need to get out of the chronic dieting, and we need to spend a good amount of time at maintenance, at least 6 months, to see your physique change. Like my transformation, it was at least 6 months before I actually saw any differences in my physique. We want to get comfortable sitting there. We want to be progressing in the gym, so you're going to have a lot more energy now. You'll have a lot more carbs, you'll have a lot more energy to play with, and we want to use that wisely in training sessions. You want to really push as hard as you can, make sure you're always progressing with all of your lifts in one way or another, and you're finally going to see these results. Okay, so we can either chill there, or if you want to take it up a notch, we can do a building phase. So in a building phase, we can't build muscle without gaining a bit of fat. That's just how it works. You do gain a bit of fat for the muscle that you build. So if you do commit to this, I would go lean, not some big dirty bulk. Again, we're not living that bodybuilder lifestyle. We just want a lean building phase where you eat a little bit over maintenance. Again, you're pushing hard in all of your sessions, targeting different muscle groups. And then you'll do that again at least 6 months, I would say. At this stage, if you have done a build, you've gained a bit of body fat, you will likely want to go back to the start, but this time you'll be able to diet on higher calories because you've got more muscle mass on your frame, which means your body burns more, and you won't have to diet for as long again because you've got more muscle mass and you haven't accumulated as much fat as if you just let all of your habits slide and you gain fat that way. So if we go back to fat loss again, it will feel easy this time. You'll already have the skills that you developed in this sustainable fat loss phase. So can you see how this all ties together now? And we're not just going to get stuck here and expect to build a strong toned physique. We need to go through each of these phases. We need structure in our training and our nutrition throughout every phase. Okay, The toned, defined physique that you've always dreamt of having is not another diet away. It's not 15 pounds lighter. It's likely going to be heavier. It's going to have more muscle mass. And it comes from spending time dedicated to building your physique. If you're ready to put some of this into action, you're done with getting in the gym with your training, I've got a free training plan that you can access in the description.